Hello, I'm Congresswoman Terry Sewell, and I want to wish you all a happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by a very special guest who I will introduce in just a moment. I want to first acknowledge the tornado disaster that has bestowed upon my beloved home city of Selma, Alabama. I know that Martin Luther King Day is also a day of service, so I don't want to. I'm dressed and prepared to continue the outreach in the various communities that need help here in Selma. But I also want to acknowledge and say a thank you to our very special guest. I know he's incredibly busy on this day. As we celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. King, we are reminded of the sacrifice he and so many other um, freedom fighters made in the name of equality and justice for all. Dr. King's courage and foresight motivated generations to follow in his footsteps, holding our nation accountable to its highest ideals. Dr. King's life gave us a roadmap to guide us in our fight to root out racism and discrimination wherever they hide. However, as Dr. King taught us, progress is elusive, and every generation must fight to preserve the progress of the past and advance it. Today, too many Americans continue to confront the same injustices suffered over 50 years ago. From the racial disparities brought to light by this COVID-19 pandemic to the never-ending threat against the sacred right to vote, we know that there is still much work to be done. This year, as we approach the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington and the 58th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, we are once again reminded that old battles have become new again. As the Supreme Court continues its assault on the Voting Rights Act, states across the nation are passing new laws to restrict voting access. Tragically, we as Americans find ourselves at another great inflection point in our history where the future of voting right hangs in the balance. Just as Dr. King picked himself up and um, time and time again, we must pick ourselves up and continue his fight. Our foremothers and forefathers gave us a roadmap. They were tacticians and strategists. It wasn't by happenstance that they were in Selma, Alabama. They were there because they knew that they could organize, agitate, and create a movement for the right to vote. We should learn from their playbook. Now more than ever, we should take a lesson from our dear friend, from my dear friend and former colleague, John Lewis, as well as Dr. King. And it was Dr. King who reminded us that if we can't fly, then run. If we can't run, then walk. If we cannot walk, then crawl. But whatever we do, you have to keep moving forward. I don't think there's anyone that embodies this spirit of moving forward and taking the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to the next level like my esteemed guest. So, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce the firstborn son of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Mrs. Coretta Scott King, a longtime human rights and civil rights activist, Martin Luther King III. Martin, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom as we celebrate your father's birthday.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman, and thank you especially for the tremendous work that you continue to do. I send my prayers, our family is in prayer for Selma and all of the areas around our country. Of course, we had challenges in Georgia as well, although I have not been home in a few days. But as we prepare to throughout the day to observe the King holiday, I think, as you said, we should be focused on service and really finishing the unfinished work that Dad and so many others began. The most important thing I say often, and you have been so entrenched in this campaign, a voteless people, Dad said, is a powerless people, and one of the most important steps we can take is that short step to the ballot box. But when some of our elected officials across the nation are in legislative sessions, and obviously I don't like to be this direct because it really but the truth is it's our Republican friends, and you have to wonder how do you call someone a friend when they are doing things to diminish your power. The one power we have where we all are equal is the franchise of the right to vote. That people in this state and around the nation died so we might have those rights, and yet today we still do not have uh, full voting rights participation uh, unencumbered. And so we got to keep fighting until those barriers are knocked down, until the John Lewis bill is passed and other bills that are not acts. It was wonderful to have an act, but as we know, an act has to be renewed every so many years. And you really shouldn't have to renew a person's right to vote. It should have been something we had when we turned 18 or 21, and then it should be permanent.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of work to do in 2023 and beyond.
Well, you have certainly, been carrying the torch and doing such an amazing job globally in promoting not just, voting rights, but really human rights, and I wanna thank you for your service. You know, today is very special to so many of us. As I said, I see it as a day of service because as your mother rightfully said, Coretta Scott King, that every generation has to, do its part, and for me, my generation, we are direct beneficiaries of the movement, and our job is to stand on the shoulders of others and then do our own work. We can't just stand on their shoulders and not act. So, what does this day mean for you? And you know, I can only imagine. I know that you are the firstborn son, and I can only imagine the pressure. But I just want to say that you have done an amazing job of carrying forth his legacy. But tell us what Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday means to you this holiday.
Well, it always means, it begins with thinking about the triple evils that he talked about, how to eradicate poverty, racism, and violence within our society. And I do every year I do an evaluation to determine just how far we are in relationship to that quest. And unfortunately, every year we come up short. The beauty of it is every January we have an opportunity to start anew. And it was amazing that God had him born in January, and there's a national holiday that we observe. And so we can say, well, we did not fulfill the dream last year, freedom, justice, and equality for all humankind, but we start again every year, just as we do New Year's resolutions. And there's many of us, or there some certainly, who do New Year's resolutions, and those resolutions become true. We have to look at our freedom in the same way. We have to make a plan of action and fulfill and bring that plan to fruition. And then we have to figure out how do we create unity. Today, it's about getting above the noise because there's so much division that, you know, there's always been different points of view that needed to be aired out, but never has there been the kind of division that we are witnessing on a daily basis just by looking at how long it took, the speaker to be chosen. 15 votes.
I can tell you it was painful for those of us on the floor. 15 votes.
I mean, I've
Um,
haven't seen anything like that in over 160 years. And that just goes to say that it's going to be very difficult. This is going to be a difficult ride because the speakership held a certain level of distinction. And now the speaker had to trade away everything that whatever the speaker's power represented. And so it's going to be interesting to see, how the nation and Congress navigates through this speakership. But more than anything else, again, I think that the Republicans want to go in a direction of just opening up a lot of investigations. And the public needs to be serviced. There are people who are hungry in our nation that need to be fed. There are people who have no houses that need shelter. There are children that are failing in schools. We need to be focused on real issues for the public of our nation, the American people. And that's what certainly you, as our Democratic leadership, has provided. There may be a few Republicans, but most of them seem to be focused on something else, and some are so extreme
Yeah.
that it takes us in a direction where our democracy is in trouble. But I think the American people showed we're very concerned about our democracy, because I would go as far to say that with the way things are in our nation, um, the Republicans should have won 40 or 50 seats.
Mhm.
And, what is it, 6, 8 seats maybe? Um,
Five, five.
so, I mean,
They have a 5-seat majority, and if we can get rid of, Santos, it may be down to 4.
4, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But, Martin, I think that people thought that, your father and the freedom fighters that surrounded him and helped him, that somehow all of this was happenstance. But they were strategic, they were tactical. And what do you think that we, this generation, can learn from their struggle that will help us move forward?
So I think, everything for me is a strategic plan. If you have no plan, you will not have much success. You may accidentally and have a few victories. But if you think about the modern civil rights movement, Montgomery was 1955, and all the major campaigns after Montgomery. Well, the three major ones I say: the Birmingham campaign in '63, the Selma campaign in '65, and Montgomery, of course, being in '55. But it was several years between '55 and you had the sit-ins and the freedom rides in the sit-ins in '60 and '61, and then the
And the
Birmingham
March on
campaign.
Washington in '63.
And that's right, and the March on Washington. But all of that was strategic. Today, we need to have a strategic plan that addresses the specifics of what we want to achieve in this nation. And I think I don't see us developing that enough. I think the individual organizations. I work as the chairperson of the Drum Major Institute. My wife Andrea
Absolutely.
is the
Yeah,
president,
yeah.
and I think that all of our different organizations, whether it's National Action Network, whether it's NAACP, whether it's Urban League, whether it's Rainbow Push, and many,
Or
many
whether
more.
it's a Congressional Black Caucus, we have to work
Yeah,
together.
that's right. Even more so, because people are hurting all over this country. What I know is it just takes a few good women and men to bring about change. And my dad and mom, through their leadership, taught us that. So we have to be determined. We have to be diligent. We have to never, as my late congressperson and your dear friend, John Lewis, never gave up, never gave out, never gave in. And we have to keep that spirit and consistently get into good trouble.
That's
Because
exactly right.
that's what
How do you think that they were able to do that? Given, I know that they had great faith, they had to have. But, when I think about the losses that we've experienced around trying to get the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Act passed, it passed the House twice, but each time it stalled in the Senate. And, I can't tell you how some many of the young activists felt dejected, and they felt like there was no hope. And I can only imagine what Dr. King and all of those freedom fighters felt when they, I mean, as you said, from the right from Rosa Parks on the bus, which is 54 and 55, to 65, where the voting rights was passed. That's 10 years, and of course, we know that the struggle was way worse under Jim Crow segregation and slavery. So it was a long time coming. And so, what advice would you give? What words would you give to our young activists who do feel tired and weary?
Well, first of all, I would encourage people to always, you got to take a break. You can't stay on the battlefield fighting every day. Now, that does not mean you are going to go away permanently, but you have to go renew yourself. You have to sometimes do some praying. You have to sometimes do some meditation. In fact, a meditation should be a part of your daily ritual, in my judgment. You can't watch the news every day, and this is not to diminish. It's just to say that when you watch news every day, only thing that happens is you get angrier and angrier. And we can't constructively engage if we're angry and emotional. That's why strategy is so important. It doesn't mean that you're not passionate about what you believe in. But my advice is understand this is a marathon and not a sprint. It would be wonderful if I could wave a magic wand and all the problems that existed were gone. But that's not reality. Reality is that, as I said, it's a marathon. But even in a
Amen.
marathon, sometimes you have to take a break. Maybe it's just a few days or maybe it's a week, but then you come back renewed, re-engaged, reinvigorated, ready to take this fight to the next level. And that's the advice that I would give. Just, this is the generation that wants to have everything instant. And
Instant.
unfortunately, it's not instant. It's not instant. It's a more
No, it's
long,
not.
protracted battle.
Absolutely. I venture to say that, you and your wife, and the Drum Major Institute has done such wonderful work. Can you talk to us? I know that you all are regarded as the foremost global human and civil rights, activists, and I would love to for my listening audience, the folks in my district, to know what you're doing and how we can be a part of that.
So one of the things we embarked upon through the Drum Major Coalition, which is one of the programmatic thrusts of the Drum Major Institute, the Drum Major Institute itself is like the parent company. The coalition is about 40 organizations that are in the swing states. They're in Arizona, they are in Texas, they are in North Carolina, they are in, I think we have one in Alabama that we fund also, Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. And these organizations are led by Black and Brown folks. And we set a goal to raise $100 million over the next 4 years to fund some of the work that these organizations are doing. These organizations are really one of the major reasons, including in Georgia, that the Republican wave was stayed back because people and were very concerned, wanted to make sure that democracy is preserved, and that we do not become a fascist nation, as some of these governors and legislatures, and I should say specifically Republican governors and legislatures, are trying to resist all of our voting rights. In our own state, we can't even bring water to a person who's standing in line for long periods of time. These are draconian laws. And in addition to that, we've got a Supreme Court that is, first of all, they attempted to eviscerate the Voting Rights Act in 2013. And now the sad thing about it is our daughter, Yolanda Renee, who's 14 and
Yes.
is an activist, has
And
less
I have to
rights.
tell you, you must be very proud of her. Her voice is a voice of her generation, and you can tell that it was divinely inspired, not just by you and your wonderful wife, but also her grandfather. I mean, she is just a powerhouse, and I just want you to know that she truly is. I know that the next generation is in good hands with people like Yolanda.
Out of Yolanda, and what she represents. But my higher point was when she was born in 2008, it was on the brink of President Obama being elected, and then in 2009 coming into office. She had voting rights then. She had women's rights now are gone, and those all of that has to be rebuilt. And so it's tragic that she has less rights in in 2023 than she had in 2008. Uh, that is not right. We got to do something about that. Again, this is a long term battle, and basically because of what was done in the election just last year in November, it shows that when we come together, even we have to be even more diligent. We can begin to turn things around, and it's been it's a slower process than I would like to see. But I'm really very excited about what I see young people doing around this country, in Selma, there's leadership all over this country. Some of them, what's exciting to me is if you think about it, it was Birmingham in 1963 where students came out of school and got arrested,
I
high
mean,
school and
they were
elementary students.
13, 14. They were in junior high school and high school.
And that hadn't happened in a long time until I believe the Parkland students in at Douglas Stone uh, High School in Parkland,
Yes.
Florida. And then you had high school students again engaged, and they're permanently going to be engaged. But I think this new younger group of people are different and want to see a different world and want to see us get rid of racism.
Very good. Last question, because I know that this is a very busy day for you, and I'm just again want to say thank you for taking the time to speak with us. Um, you know, what would you say to those who want to know what they should be doing today, and how can they get engaged? I know that. It's important that every generation, and as you said, we've seen this younger generation become engaged. And frankly, Georgia has really paved the way of how we can organize and mobilize, and our vote actually create the change that we want to see with Warnock, and the fact that Georgia has two Democratic senators in 2023 is a big deal. So, in closing, can you just tell us what those who are looking to do something today that really embodies your father's legacy, what would you advise them to do? And what's your message really to my constituents and others in terms of how we can best carry forward the torch?
I think it's characterized in this simple way, and I'm gonna do two things very quickly. I'm gonna borrow some words of our dad used to say that everybody can, and you know we all are so consumed with technology today, but we're not using technology at its highest level. There are some who have podcasts. There are some who are doing their work through art, through literally painting pictures. There are some who are doing their art through spoken word poetry. There are some who are doing their work through any, just through TikTok and TikTok. But there's so many of them. I get them mixed up. But every last one of the modalities, the technology modalities, I say young people need to offer themselves for office. Think about this: if you are 21 and in the military, if you go to college, when you graduate, if you go to ROTC, you're lieutenant, which is a commander in the military. If you can be a commander at 21 in the Army, commanding maybe 20, 25 troops, then why can't you offer yourself for office? Run for school boards, run for city council or state legislative office. I want to see young people involved directly because we need their energy, we need their vision, we need them to understand changes. We see educational systems. Uh, they basically trying to rewrite history, basically saying that certain things can't happen in the state of Virginia, as you know, in many other states. They passed a law that you can't even study Martin Luther King Jr. And something is wrong with the way some people are thinking. And we have to get people thinking in a different way because of people that do not remember their history are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. We need to know our history and we need to know more also, not just about Martin Luther King Jr., but there's so many others that we need to know about and understand because that's the only way we're going to be able to move forward. We must reincorporate the true history and not let revisionists rewrite the history of our community.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for those words
And
of
so,
wisdom.
thank you, Congresswoman, and most of you
Yes.
do each and every day. Thank you for your leadership.
Well, thank you. In remembrance to our listening audience of the wonderful legacy and sacrifices of Dr. King, today and going forward, let us recommit ourselves to battling injustices anywhere and everywhere we see it. We cannot afford apathy. Without our collective efforts, we empower those enabling the erosion of our democracy. I want to thank our special guests. Thank you so much, Martin Luther King III. Please give my best to your beautiful wife and your lovely daughter. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to speak to my constituents. And I want to say to my constituents on this,
How much?
Dr. King, on this day, the Martin Luther King birthday, I hope that you will engage in service and outreach. And I know that uh, my beloved hometown of Selma is in need of so much help in removing the debris, in offering meals in order to help our displaced. So I hope that you'll take today to heart and implement all of the wonderful things that Martin has just shared with us and engage in civic participation. It is so important. Your vote is your voice. And if you don't vote, a voteless people, as Dr. King said, is a powerless people. Thank you, Martin, for reminding us of that. And I want to thank all of my listening audience for joining us. Again, happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day.